get it. Okay, and I've got Danielle going to join us. One more person. Okay. All right. Hello, hello. And I think Danielle's jumping on. You have not missed anything. I know a few people are having a few, challenges the first day. That's okay. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, Strength of a Woman, Why You Are Proverbs 31. And I'm hoping some of you guys will jump on the chat and help me out today. I am going to ask a few questions, but I'm Lauren Cruz. I am probably more of a lurker on Band. I read things, but I'm terrible about participating and commenting. I definitely read y'all's comments and follow up with you guys, probably more so than I know you, but probably better than you know me. But thanks for joining us today. And I think some of you guys are jumping on from the coffee chat this morning. It was so nice. I honestly thought nobody will be here. Nobody will come on, but you guys did great. So thank you. Thank you for coming. But we are going through this book. It's called Strength of a Woman, Why You Are Proverbs 31. I wrote it. You can pick it up on Amazon. You can go to my website, laurencruz.com. I'll mail it to you. I think there's a link to it also on the Rooted Cafe under resources. So you can get it that way too. But I mentioned this is going to be the slowest book study ever. There's 22 chapters in the book, and we're going to do 2 chapters a month. So we're going to basically follow the content in the front of the book. And so we'll read 2 chapters a month, and we'll just come together on the fourth Tuesday of each month, and we'll just kind of go over different word studies and the 2 letters for those months. I think under Band, there's a download. I'll double check in the file folder, but I think there's like a download that kind of gives you exactly what we're going to talk about each week that we do meet, or each month that we do meet. So if you're not sure, check the downloads that are connected with this group as well. So welcome. Today is just an introduction. We're going to meet and talk a little bit for about 25 minutes or so, and then I'll pause the recording and we'll do questions and answers. I'm going to start kind of how I started the book. By asking my friends, what do you guys think of? And you guys are probably way ahead of the game here, because you guys are way in the Bible and in Torah way more than a lot of ladies are. But I'm going to ask you, when you hear Proverbs 31 woman, what are your thoughts on this woman? So if you guys want to unmute and tell me, or type it in. When you hear Proverbs 31, what are your first thoughts? What are your initial thoughts on the Proverbs 31 woman? What do you think of her? What do you think of her? I'm gonna read your comments. Unrealistic. Amen. Definitely. Organized. Yeah, she is. She seems to be. Anybody else? Anybody else? She seems kind of perfect. Oh, add Ruth as a co-host. How do I do that? Oh my gosh, you're asking me to like step out here. Oh, how do I do that?
Oh.
Ruth.
When you go to participants, there's 3 buttons.
Yeah. Let's see. Ruth.
Or you can add Danielle, because she's on her computer, I believe. And I don't know why.
And
Everyone here is having trouble.
Make a co-host. I got it. I think I did it. There you go.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, I think I did it. Okay. Danielle, does that look right? Did it change?
You added Carla instead of me.
I did not. Danielle.
Yeah, I'm not ready for that.
Carla, you are stepping up.
Sorry, ladies.
Okay, here's Danielle. And okay, the problem is when I push on it, it like moves. Make co-host. Do you want to make Danielle a co-host? Yes. Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect. Remove co-host permission. So I took it away from you. All right. All right. So I got a couple of you jumping on as answering my question. And I got kind of the same response when I asked different friends, what do they think of Proverbs 31? And they all, they said the same thing. Or a lot of them said, hey, my grandma was a great example of Proverbs 31, but me not so much. And she's a pretty good standard. A lot of ladies feel like she's a standard and she's unobtainable. And I felt the same way until I started digging into the passage as a Bible study, right? I wanted to look into it a little deeper and really find out what I could about it. Definitely spirit-filled, definitely. So when I started digging into it, I learned a lot. And I went to the original language, right? And what I learned, it was kind of interesting to me because I never, I definitely grew up in the church. I never looked at it with a Hebrew mindset. It was never explained to me through a Hebrew word study. It was never explained to me as from a word study or as an example of the Hebrew alphabet. None of that. And so what I discovered was kind of interesting to me. So these are some things that I learned. Number one, it is an acrostic poem of the Hebrew alphabet. And what that means is every verse starts with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So we know acrostic poems. And I use the example, when we memorize the planets, we use an acrostic, right? My educated mother just served us 9, pickles, right? Or some people will use that fully rely on God, that acrostic to memorize things. So acrostics are all over the Bible. The Bible is full of acrostics. And it's used to memorize this advice that a mom is giving her son. And she's like, listen, this is the kind of woman you should marry. And A, she needs to be like this, B, C, D, and it just goes through the entire Hebrew alphabet. The next item that I learned is that the Hebrew alphabet is pictographic. And you guys probably know this. But if you realize that our language started as images on a cave wall, right? Pictures on a cave wall. They started as these large images and then they slowly, shrank and came down to a smaller image that represented a thought or an idea. Then those pictographs would have been used to trigger to memorize, like, right? We use acrostic to memorize things. So the pictures were used to memorize things. So for example, Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. And it's the ox. And so the first thing you're going to do, son, is you're going to marry a woman who is strong as an ox, but also you're yoking yourself together because you're going to yoke yourself in marriage and become a working team. And so you need to find someone who is strong as an ox to partner yourself with, right? So who can find a virtuous woman or a strong woman, because it actually starts with the word, a woman of strength. That's how it starts. So I started seeing like, oh, wait, like that, there's actually a rhythm to this. There's actually, like, it makes sense in Hebrew. And then when you find out, like, oh, that word in Hebrew actually translates differently than it does in English. Oh, that makes sense. Like, I can be that woman so much easier than I can be a woman of virtue that they picked in English. So when you begin to understand that, it makes more sense. And it actually makes more sense in Hebrew than it does in English. So as we look at the different letters and the images behind the letters, we see how those images show up in the verses. The words are in the verses. So we have images like an ox, we have a house, we even have a snake. We have teeth, we have a mouth, we have mouth. She speaks with kindness and wisdom. And so it begins to make sense, like, oh gosh, I can remember that. And it helps in memorization. I don't get into this in the book, but we can talk about it. We know that the passage is likely advice from Bathsheba to Solomon. And if you recall, David was married to Bathsheba, and David's great grandmother was Ruth. And if you know that the letters are what they mean, and if you know the verses in Hebrew, and actually we were kind of talking about this a little bit in the coffee chat this morning, but the words are actually used in the book of Ruth. The same verses and the same words are in the book of Ruth. And so a lot of folks, including Rabbi Foreman, believe that Proverbs 31 is a commentary of the book of Ruth. And David very well could have known Ruth, right? If it's his great grandmother, she could have been alive. She would have been alive. And so if he's like, yeah, son, I want you to know this is the kind of perfect woman. Like my great grandma Ruth was like the perfect woman. And so he would have explained that to Bathsheba, or Bathsheba could have very well known Ruth. And she's like, Solomon, you need to know a woman like Ruth. She's a woman of excellence. And in fact, the only other woman that is called a woman of excellence, or an Eshet Chayil, is Ruth. She's the only other woman in the Bible that's called that. So we're going to go through all those letters. We're going to learn what the imagery is, and we're going to look at the words that start each verse. We're going to look at important words in each verse, and we're going to relate them to women that I actually know. As I began to write the book, I prayed that God would introduce me to women that emulate each verse. And so God was so faithful. Some of them are lifelong friends. I have friends that I went to high school with, and then some of them are brand new friends that I met along the way. And as I got to know them and as I interviewed them, I would hear their stories, and I was like, you really remind me of Gimel. Your story, you sound like a bridge in the community. You are a woman who really is trying to connect communities. Or you are a woman who really, no matter what, you really speak with wisdom and kindness. And so I was able to connect their stories with the verses. I also, as I dug into the passage, I learned that the passage has a theme of a military theme. So this whole Proverbs 31 passage is considered a heroic hymn. Would that surprise you? It has a military theme. A heroic hymn is something that is sung over warriors when they come home from war, right? What one comes to mind when David and Solomon returned, and the women came out, and the women were singing like, yo, David killed 10,000 and Saul only killed 1,000, right? That was actually a heroic hymn. And so this is one that God put in the Bible for women, where we are heroic, fierce warriors. And we really are. When it comes to our families and for the men in our lives and our children, we are fierce warriors. And if you really understand what a Ezer Kenegdo is, it's a serious battle job. Like, we go to the mat and we engage in spiritual warfare for our families. So that's in there as well. Another theme that is in Proverbs 31 is the priesthood. There's so many references to the colors of the tabernacle, the materials of the tabernacle, the materials that the priests wear, the colors that the priests wear, the actions of the priest. And so that's in there too. And how does that apply to us as wives and as mothers? So we'll find that out. Also, there's so much pressure in there. We're supposed to be wives and mothers. Well, what happens when you can't have children? What happens when I have a story in here? My very best friend made a promise to her husband when she got married at 18 years old, 19 years old, that he didn't want children. And at 18 years old, she was so madly in love. She's like, okay, I promise I'll never have children. Well, a few years into the marriage, she wanted to have children. Like, how do you handle that? Like, I promised I would never have children. How can you possibly be a Proverbs 31 woman if you don't have children, right? So we talk about that in the book as well. How do you profess to be a Proverbs 31 woman if you've been divorced? How do you profess to be a Proverbs 31 woman if you've had multiple husbands? Like I have a story in here. She's had I think she said she's had 4 husbands, 5 husbands, right? The woman at the well comes to mind. So we kind of go over all of that because if you've met these ladies in the thick of it, then and with the church's idea of what a Proverbs 31 woman is, then there's a lot of judgment and there's a lot of heaviness to it. But when you look at the original language and you look at what God sings over, because this is a song that is sung over women every Shabbat. This is a song that I have experienced in some Messianic congregations. The women are encircled by the men, and this is a song that is sung over and prayed over the women by men. And what a powerful opportunity to have this stated over us. And God speaks this over us, like this is in his word as a gift to us. And so my hope is once we have studied through this, it's not such a hardship, and that we might actually love it. And a lot of us pick verses out of here. She makes her arms strong, or she clothes herself with strength and dignity. A lot of us have those verses on our walls, and we kind of like those verses because they sound good. But once we've actually dug into them and we see what letters go with them and what some of those verses mean, they might have even deeper meaning for us. So we've got a few minutes before we hit stop on the record. And if you have any questions or any specific verses you're looking forward to, go ahead and put it in the chat or unmute, and let's talk about it for just a few minutes before we stop recording. So. All right, I'm going to look at some of the comments. It says, Ruth is saying, I love the connection to the priesthood. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that. That's in there, and we're going to talk about that. Yeah, Danielle is saying it makes so much sense. Yeah. Yeah, look down upon because virtuous has a different meaning. Yeah, Sarita, we're going to talk about that. That's like, it starts right off. And I don't want to have a spoiler too much, but King James, when he put the Bible into English, think about it. Women, women were not in a equal or good position. We could have virtuous women, we could have excellent women, but the word in Hebrew is actually strong, and it's a military connotation. It's a woman of valor. It is a woman of valor, but it's a military word. It's the same word, David's mighty men. That word mighty is the same word. And so we couldn't have, like, forbid that you use that word to describe a woman during the time of King James, right? And so so I'm sure because of the culture, he picked virtuous, right? We would have pure and virtuous women. So that we're going to talk a little bit about that. And so that's part of the problem. Like in English, that's the word that was picked because of the culture. Well, it's, you know, look at the stigma that it's put on women and how it's changed, you know, our position in the family and in culture and really in the whole idea of Ezer Kenegdo, you know, we're the warrior for the family. So yeah. Let's see, we've got a couple new. Yeshua revealed himself to women first, and she was the one to go and tell the disciple in the resurrection. Exactly. You know, and here's the thing too. Think about it. If you're at the fall, think about the fall, and you've got Satan standing next to the woman, standing next to Adam, and God proclaims, look, you're going to get crushed by her seed. Do you think he's just going to stand there and just say, you know, I'm just going to leave the woman alone through history and I've got no problem with her? He's going to seek to destroy her, right? And so for the rest of history, you know, we have been his target. And so we haven't had a chance since the dawning of time. And so even something as simple as the Proverbs 31 passage in the Bible has been twisted and distorted. And so I think we can regain some of the victory out of it. Yeah, we have damaged so many. Yep. I'm just reading through some of the comments. Yep. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Any favorite verses? Do you guys have any favorite verses in here that we'll just put a little bookmark on it and we'll look forward to studying those when we get to it? How many of you guys are familiar with the pictographic images of the Hebrew alphabet? How many of you guys have done Brenda's class in the Rooted Cafe? She goes deep into it. We're not going quite as deep as she is. I will say, and I know I've said this a lot, my book is kind of a bridge between the church and Hebraic thinking. I do not go as deep as Brenda does. If you are new to this is going to be a good introduction. If you guys have a deeper understanding, you are so welcome to chat and bring us a little deeper. You're welcome to expound on it. Yep, just reading some of the comments. Yep. Okay. All right, we've got just a few minutes before I'm going to hit pause on the recording. And then if you guys want to unmute and do any kind of question. Yeah, it says I've done part of the Psalm 119. Yeah, exactly. The Psalm 119 that Charlie's been doing with the is also an acrostic poem. Yeah, so it's the same thing. You're able to see the imagery of each of the Hebrew letters. I didn't get to do that. I started it and I didn't get to finish it. And I'm kind of disappointed. All right. Do I need to hit re-record for that one as well? Okay, they're going to keep it as separate. Thank you, Ruth. I wasn't sure. All right, so I pause it and then I re-record it. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to pause. I'll go ahead and stop right now and I'll give us a break. And then I will re-record for questions. That means you guys got to hit questions and answers. It's going to be a long 30 minutes if I don't get any questions. All right, let me pause on the recording. I'm just looking for the recording where to pause it.
Do you want me to do it for you, Lauren?
Yeah, yeah, if you want to do it, go for it. I can't find the recording thing on the bottom.